Predicting the future is not easy. Who would have predicted that the Diamondbacks and Rangers were going to be in the World Series just 2 years after they both lost over 100 games? And that's why I'm here today. I'm predicting the future, predicting the breakouts of 2024. I'm going to be picking one from each position and then 5 pitchers, and I will end it off with the ultra rare wild card who I can guarantee is on nobody else's radar and you might not have ever even heard of it. But before we get to that, we need to have a brief talk about how we can tell if a player is poised for a breakout. There is one big factor that we have to take into account when predicting a breakout, and that is age. It's pretty obvious, but a player's age is a really good predictor on potential progression or regression. If you look at all these graphs, you can see that most players' primes are in their mid to late 20s. 23 to 26 years old is the range that we want to look at to find these breakout candidates. The second biggest factor for me is their prospect status. How do the scouts say that their tools are going to play at the major league level? I could make this really easy and just pick a bunch of top prospects or former top prospects. These are the guys that the experts say have the tools to be great, but I'm looking for some guys that are flying under the radar, so to speak. That means I won't be looking too much into this, but it will still be there. There will be some former top prospects, but not at every position. You gotta mix it up a little bit. The final factor is the underlying numbers. The production is not there at the moment, or else they wouldn't even be considered for a breakout year, so we have to go deeper. For hitters, we want to look at the quality of contact they're making, using stats like expected batting average, expected slugging, expected WOBA, and their exit velocities. For pitchers, you want to look at the pitches that they're throwing. Do they have an elite pitch? What makes it good? Does their arsenal work well together? What are they missing? And can they take that next step to get some good production for their team? Now that we have all that out of the way and we know what we're looking for, let's get into the team. Starting off with the captain of the defense at the catcher position, I'm going with Patrick Bailey. If you watched my other videos, you would know that Patrick Bailey and I get along very well. He played 97 games in his rookie season and put up 2.8 WAR, which is pretty good for that small of a sample. The offensive output was not great, however, and all of his value came from his defense. His defense is very good. He was in the 100th percentile in framing runs in 2023, which is the most valuable thing a catcher can do on defense. He also was in the 98th percentile when it comes to throwing out runners, which is more important than it has been since the 2023 rule change. This defensive ability at the most valuable defensive position gives Bailey a very high floor as a player. You could see that by looking at his 2.8 FWAR last season with just a 78 WRC+. I think in 2024 though, Bailey could easily turn into a 5 WAR player, very similar to what we saw from William Contreras last season. In order for this to happen, Bailey's going to have to be at least an average offensive player. When you look at the hit tool, the walk rate was pretty low last year, just 5.9%, but in the minors, he had a double-digit walk rate every season. I expect that to improve a little bit, and it's the same story with the strikeout rate. In terms of power, he had a 63rd percentile barrel rate last year, meaning he is hitting the ball hard at an ideal launch angle more often than most players. Adding on to that, his expected WOBA was 0.29 points higher than his actual WOBA. This gives me a lot of hope when it comes to his offensive profile in 2024, and the defense is already there, and I think he is going to break out. Now moving to first base, I have Nolan Schanuel. Nolan played in just 22 games in the minor leagues before getting called up to the Angels in 2023. He played in 29 games at the major league level, and he did something pretty impressive while he was there. He walked more than he struck out. He's not your stereotypical first baseman. He doesn't hit for much power, and I would compare him to Luis Arraez. Both are lefties and both are very contact-oriented. Schanuel does walk a lot more, which is what really gets me excited about him. He could very well be a 400 on-base guy next year, and it wouldn't shock me. Taking a lot of walks and putting balls in play are two good ways to raise that OBP. His ceiling to me is an Alex Bregman-esque hitter, gets on base a lot, puts the ball in play, hits for a little bit of power. He's only 22 years old, and he's my pick for a breakout first baseman. Going one base forward to second base, I have Nolan Gorman. Gorman is the man. I would not be surprised if he's the best hitter in the Cardinals next year. His barrel rate was in the top 10% in 2022 and 2023. In 2023, it was in the 97th percentile, along with names like Matt Olson and Mike Trout. To go along with that power, he has great discipline at the plate with an 83rd percentile walk rate. He's a great hitter, but he is yet to play over 120 games in a season. He did have some back problems over the past few seasons, but this offseason apparently he's been working on a nutrition program and now he has less back inflammation. Don't ask me how that works, but that's what he says. Defensively, he's not that good, but he's not awful either. A little below average in 2023 at second base. What would I consider a breakout year for him? I would say a 130 WRC+, putting up 4-ish WAR. I think there's a good chance that happens in 2024, which is why he's my pick at second base. Moving over to the final base, third, My breakout third baseman is Maikel Garcia of the Kansas City Royals. He may have already inserted himself into the upper echelon of defensive third baseman. He's truly a shortstop, but of course the Royals have some guy named Bobby Witt playing there, so he's going to play third for now. He put up 14 outs above average in 2023, which was in the 98th percentile. Offensively though, similar to Patrick Bailey, the production was not there. He put up an 84 WRC+, meaning he was 16% worse than the league average hitter. When we take a look under the hood though, things look a lot better. He posted an average exit velocity in the 87th percentile at 91.8 miles per hour, and his hard hit rate was in the 93rd percentile. His hard hit rate was better than guys like Adolis Garcia, Fernando Tatis, and Austin Riley. That's some serious power. Now, why was the offensive production below average? It is the launch angle. 35% of the balls that he put in play were considered to be topped, and 48% of them were grounders compared to just 29% line drives. To take advantage of this great exit velocity, Garcia is going to need to hit the ball in the air, or else it's just going to lose its speed when it hits the ground. He's one small fix away from being a star in the league, and that's why he's my selection at third base. Now moving on to the captain of the infield, the shortstop, I have a tie between two very similar players that play in the same division. I think you may know who I'm talking about. Oneil Cruz and Elly De La Cruz. What is there to say that hasn't already been said about these two? There are a couple other players you could put in this spot, but if I didn't put these two, I would just feel bad about it. They have the exit velocities, they have the speed, they have the arm. Elly's a little bit better defensively, but Oneil has put up some better offensive numbers in 2022 when he was healthy. This is the most obvious pick I have on this team. They're both young, they're both top prospects, they have the underlying numbers. Just let me have this one, okay? Next up, getting to the outfield, not so obvious one, it's Leody Taveras. He's a great defender in center field, posting 7 outs above average last season, which was in the 92nd percentile. Taveras saw improvement in pretty much every offensive metric from 2022 to 2023. His expected WOBA jumped from the 2nd percentile to the 38th percentile. His hard hit rate went from the 27th to 63rd percentile. His strikeout rate went down from 26% to 21%. This allowed him to be around a league average hitter. He's only going to be 25 years old this year, so there is a very good chance that improvement continues into 2024. If it does, he should be an above-average hitter, and when you pair that with his great defense in the outfield, you get a very valuable player. Keep your eyes on Leody Taveras in 2024. Next in the outfield, I have Jack Suwinski. Power, speed, discipline. He has the 3 pillars of modern baseball. He had a 94th percentile barrel rate, a 94th percentile walk rate, and an 80th percentile outs above average in center field. There's going to be a lot of home runs, there's going to be a lot of walks, and there's going to be some good defense. What more could you ask for? Well, Suwinski hasn't put together a complete season yet at the age of 25. You can see his stats from 2023. Those are good, but not quite a star. If you look at his splits, he put up a 68 WRC plus against lefties compared to 127 against righties. This is very common, of course, but he's going to have to raise that if he wants to become a complete player. In the offseason, there have been some reports that he was doing just that, trying to shorten his swing against lefties and generate more contact. These splits are a big reason why he hasn't quite had the star season yet. Another reason is the consistency. If you look at his WRC plus over the months of the 2023 season, you can see he had some pretty cold stretches, mainly in August when he posted a mere 55 WRC plus. The tools are definitely there, he just needs to put it all together, which is why he belongs on this team. The last outfield spot belongs to Riley Green. Yes, I know this is kind of a bailout pick, but I'll raise the bar and say he will be an MVP candidate this year. The production wasn't amazing last year as he put up just 2.3 FWAR. I think that number could get into the 4s, 5s, or even into the 6s, and he puts himself into that MVP conversation. How is that going to happen? Well, first of all, he needs to play more games. If he stays healthy for the most part and plays 140, 150 games, we're going to see that WAR go up. What is even more promising, though, is the underlying numbers. The expected numbers especially were great: an 89th percentile expected WOBA, a 92nd percentile expected batting average, and an 88th percentile expected slugging. He also recorded an 85th percentile average exit velocity. All of these numbers mean that Green was making very good contact last year. The biggest hole in his offensive game right now is the swing and miss. He struck out 27% of the time last season, which was in the 21st percentile. The quality of contact is there. If you can just lower that rate by 2 to 3%, we're going to see a much better hitter in 2024. His strikeout rate was in the 10th percentile in his rookie year in 2022, so he did improve on it last year, and I think that number will continue to go down. That ends the position players, and now it's time to get into the pitchers, which I have 3 starters and 2 relievers. For the starters, I wanted to go with one obvious, one kind of in the middle, and one really deep pick. You got your Tarek Skubals, your Bobby Millers. I didn't want to go all in with the obvious ones. Starting off with one obvious one, I have Eury Perez. Perez didn't get a full season in the majors last year because he's only 20 years old, and the Marlins don't want to run his arm into the ground at that age, which is a pretty smart move by them. He only managed to get 91 innings in the 2023 season, but this year hopefully we can see him get to that around 130 mark. He is 6'8", he has the stuff, his four-seamer is by far his best pitch, he throws it 45% of the time, it's 98 miles per hour, and it gets 1.9 inches less drop than the average four-seamer at that velocity and release point. That number is very good, and that means that there's going to be a lot of swings and misses. His one big problem is that he does give up his fair share of homers, and he does have a second percentile ground ball rate, but when you're throwing a four-seamer like he is, we aren't necessarily trying to get the batter to roll one over to the shortstop, okay? He's going for the strikeout, and that strategy worked in 2023 as he posted a 93rd percentile whiff rate and an 85th percentile strikeout rate. With the stuff he has, you might assume that he's a little bit wild, but he isn't. He walked just 3.05 batters per 9 innings last season, and I think it's pretty obvious, but I believe that Eury Perez will win a Cy Young Award sometime in the next 5 seasons. The next pitcher I have in this rotation is Kutter Crawford of the Boston Red Sox. Crawford quietly put up a solid season for the Red Sox in 2023. He posted a 4.04 ERA in 129 innings, which isn't amazing, but you aren't complaining about that getting that kind of production out of a starting pitcher. He started in 23 games and came in relief 8 times. This year he should be a full-time starter, and I think he will emerge as the best guy on that staff. Not much competition to be fair. Brian Bayo is the guy that people like to talk about in Boston, but I think people are sleeping on Kutter Crawford. When you look at Crawford's arsenal, it's hard not to get impressed by it. His number one pitch is his four-seamer, and oh boy, that thing is good. You might be saying, he throws it 94 miles per hour, that's nothing too special, but when you take a look at the movement though, it tells a different story. Out of all starting pitchers last year that threw at least 750 four-seamers, Crawford's has the third most vertical movement versus the average four-seamer at that velocity. That is above guys with elite fastballs like Garrett Cole and Spencer Strider. There are guys like Bryce Miller and Taj Bradley up here as well, who are also pretty big breakout candidates, and I wanted to include them in this team, but I didn't want to make this video an hour long. Take a look at the stats on the four-seamer from Crawford. 164 batting average against, 177 expected batting average, 327 slugging percentage, and a 327 expected slugging percentage. He has a cutter to go along with the four-seamer, which he likes to throw away to righties, into lefties, generate that weak contact. It doesn't have elite movement like the four-seamer does, but it's still well above the average. He also added a sweeper to his arsenal last season, and it was amazing with a 125 batting average against and nearly a 40% whiff rate. This arsenal makes Crawford a very promising pitcher in my eyes. Now for the deep pool starting pitcher, we are going over to Los Angeles to the Angels with Chase Silseth, a 24-year-old 11th round pick, not even a top 10 prospect on his own team. Why would I put this guy on the list? In 2022, he put up a 6.6 ERA in the majors. In 2023, he put up just under a 4 ERA as a hybrid starter reliever. What do I like about this guy? Well, he's still young, going into his 24-year-old season. He strikes guys out, struck out 9.6 batters per 9 innings last season, and I think his arsenal is a lot better than the results that he's getting. He throws 6 pitches, a four-seam, slider, splitter, sinker, cutter, and curveball. He's not going out there just trying to blow people away. He's an artist out there, using different speeds, different movements, mixing up his looks. His best pitch by far in my eyes is his slider. If you ever watched Silseth pitch, you would know how nasty this thing is. How nasty? Well, you can see all the swings and misses here. He had 8.6 more inches of vertical movement than the average, which was second in the entire league by the way, and 4 more inches of horizontal movement versus the average. When you have a pitch like this, I expect some better results, which is why Silseth makes this team as a breakout candidate. Let's make our way to the bullpen with Fernando Cruz of the Cincinnati Reds. Lots of strikeouts when Cruz is on the mound. He had a 99th percentile strikeout rate last season, and most of that is because of his splitter. Opponents hit .094 against it and recorded a whiff rate of 57%, which, in case you didn't know, is very good. Now, he is 33 years old, which is pretty old, especially compared to some of the other guys on this team, but last year technically was his rookie season, so he still could technically be considered a breakout, and he definitely has the stuff to do it. The final pitcher on this staff is Trevor McGill for the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm just going to show you a few of his four-seamers here, and you'll see why he's on this list. He throws this pitch 72% of the time, and that is for good reason. Over the last 2 seasons, he saw a 3 mile per hour increase on his fastball, and in 2023, it led to some good production. an ERA in the mid-threes and a .8 WAR coming out of the Brewers bullpen. He also had a curveball that he mixes in the remaining 28% of the time, and that is also a great pitch. Has a lot of movement, and it put up a 54% whiff rate in 2023. Obviously a very good number there. I think he's in for an even better season in 2024. And finally, we get to the wild card. This is a guy who I don't think many people know about. Not a big prospect, hasn't really done much in the majors yet, but I do think he's going to be a pretty good player. This player is Elly De La Cruz for the Boston Red Sox. They got him from the Astros in the Christian Vazquez trade in 2022. He was scouted to be a defense-first center fielder, but to me, he's shown to be a lot more than that. In 2023, Abreu was ranked as the Red Sox number 17 prospect, and he got a little playing time in the majors last season, 85 plate appearances. If we look into his minor league numbers though, a few things stand out. In 2022, he led all of AA with a 19.7% walk rate, with Edward Julian in second at 19.3%, you may have heard of him, and then third place was down at 16%, so he's well above the competition. Seeing that kind of discipline from a 23-year-old in AA is pretty impressive. He continued that into AAA while also posting a 130 WRC+ before being called up to the majors at the end of 2023. Even though it was a very small sample in the majors, the numbers were great. 135 WRC+, a 91.3 miles per hour average exit velocity, a 10.6% walk rate, which is not as good as it was in the minors, but it is above average for the major league level. He's got the power, he's got the discipline, he's got the defense. I think he has the tools, maybe not to be a superstar, but definitely an above average all-star type of player. So keep your eyes on Elly De La Cruz for the Red Sox in 2024. And that is the team. Let me know who you would put on your 2024 All-Breakout team and tell me why mine is going to be wrong. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.